listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore soulful conversations, profound conversations to reconnect with who we truly are. I'm your host, Sana, and today's episode, well, listeners, it's a gentle yet powerful invitation to all of you to realign with the sacred feminine and listen deeply to your inner rhythm, which can be a gateway for transformation, whether it's in your health or your relationships or your work as well. And to help me, joining me is the radiant Kalen Olson. She's a sacred beauty guide, and her journey from corporate and education roles to deeply embodied spiritual leadership. It is nothing short of inspiring for all of us. And after losing her father, Kanan began a journey inward. She discovered the truth that presence, beauty, and intention, they could radically reshape life. And today, on this episode of The Mindful Living, we'll try to understand how reclaiming our rhythm and also honoring the sacred within us, it can shift our outer world as well. So, with that, Kaylin, welcome to the show. And as always, it is such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Sana. Delighted to be here.
Okay. So, Kaylin, for all of us, I'll be very frank. Even I have a very little much idea about this. So if you can help us understand what exactly sacred feminine is, and how can someone begin that journey to explore the sacred feminine within them, especially if they feel disconnected.
Wow. Yeah, what a beautiful question. The sacred feminine is something that's alive and rich in many traditions, whether that's in, Celtic roots or, teachings of Lakshmi or weaving in, you know, I believe Jesus's wife, Mary, and bringing this weaving this tradition back in to the way we think about and be with the stories that can enrich us and teach us a unique way of being in the world.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And um, is this something like that has already been existing within us, or we need to kind of dive deep through channels or modalities to explore this?
Yes. So you can often think about one of the gateways really being, when you're out in nature and there's this tremendous radiance and beauty that exists out in nature. And in addition to the beauty, there's rhythmic cycles of creation, of springtime, of renewal, of the death that winter brings, as well as attuning to the trees and the wisdom of the leaves falling and everything regenerating. And so, this cyclical way of living and being is
Mhm.
all around us. And yet, we can get disconnected from that sense of inner rhythm that lives inside of us, just like out in nature, because we have such a busy world. We all have electronics now and we have different ways of connecting, but that doesn't mean that we can't come back to and find that inner rhythm. And so it exists in the beauty in nature, but it also exists when we are able to go within ourselves and connect to that ancient wisdom. And I love doing guided meditations, imagery around trees. And there's so much rich wisdom from nature that sacred texts have shown us so much symbolism of nature that we can really bring that into our own guided practices in order to restore and awaken that ancient wisdom that lives inside of us, just like it does out in nature.
I agree. I agree. Oh, wow. And you often speak about reconnecting with our inner rhythm. So, in a world that pulls us into external noise, and we kind of feel that we are lost. We are just going through the day and night. We are waking up, doing our work. We don't even remember what we had in our lunch or breakfast, or maybe yesterday in dinner. How can we begin to truly listen to the whispers, the subtle cues of our body, heart, and spirit?
Yes. So, one practical way that's really accessible is no matter where you live, if you live in a house or an apartment, we all can have access to going outside. And so, for most of us, we can go out and be with the sun in the morning. And, throughout our day, it can be helpful to take a walk, but also being outside in the evening can really help to start that rhythmic connection with nature. This is something that, really any of us can do and has a potent reflection in our lives. I noticed for myself when I'm getting out and doing that every morning, that it awakens a natural energetic rhythm inside of me that's more full of excitement and less pulled by the noise.
Mm, yeah, that definitely, you know, it is such a beautiful feeling. Especially I think the current scenarios, they give more importance to it because often we do not go out. We are either confined within our workspaces or within our houses. But going out in nature, whether it's in the morning or evening, soaking some sunlight or just feeling the breeze, I think both personally and from a professional perspective, it is much advantageous, much beneficial. I mean, physically, mentally, and spiritually as well.
Absolutely.
Great, great, Kiran. Okay, now, many women, they feel pressure to perform. I think the biggest pressure is to prove that they are capable, because it's kind of, fighting through the stigma. So, how can cultivating mindfulness and presence help women shift from this performance into authenticity, especially in whether it's in relationships or in our careers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for me, I deeply connect with that question because that's really where I was coming from for a lot of my life. And although I grew up Christian and really drew wisdom from the teachings of Jesus, and yet when I looked at sacred texts, I also noticed that, the women were either painted as basically whores or virgins, and to either really hide yourself or that your sensuality is shameful.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about this is that if you also dive in more to the texts, that you're looking at the story of Mary, for example, and she is anointing the 12 disciples' feet with expensive oil. And they're like, don't do that. It's too expensive. And basically a message of, you're too much. And I think that those type of stories can also reverberate in our own lives about perhaps feeling like the pressure to perform because we don't feel enough, or we feel like we need to do it in a way where we're applying force and we felt hidden and we want to be more recognized. But yet, really, the wisdom of the sacred feminine, and it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, it's about coming to your own natural rhythm and cycle, is that there's a more powerful story here of actually being an equal, and that, you know, Mary's with Jesus all the way to the end. And that's such a powerful testimony that whether you're a man or a woman, you can lead, and that really there are gifts that are inside all of us ready to be awakened. And so instead of looking at it as I'm feeling small and I need to prove myself, it's about coming inward and going inward and perhaps being with an archetype or perhaps, using attunement with nature when we go within to reclaim our strength that's coming from a different place. And so we can begin to completely radiate differently than how we were before. I think power is in love and it can be in softness, and it doesn't have to be so performative and so loud, actually. That wisdom of softness and gentleness is just as powerful, if not more.
I absolutely agree. And I really loved that you mentioned it's irrespective of your gender, even if you're a man or a woman. Because we come from both of them, the man and the woman, and in everyone there is a sacred feminine and there is a sacred masculine, force within. So I totally resonate with what you said.
Thank you.
Okay. And Dylan, a bit of a personal question. So you have lived through so many roles. I mean, a teacher, an artist, and then corporate professional. Was there any pivotal moment when you knew you had to shift into guiding others through sacred beauty and embodiment?
Mm, yes. Yes, there was. Really through being in ceremony with my mentor, Sarah Jenks, um, through that every month practice really started to awaken this more this bringing more beauty in to the forefront, because I think meditation is so beautiful no matter what you're following, it's all helpful. And yet, part of the divine is beauty. And that was something that I really needed to tap into and experience myself more of embodying it. And so that call really awakened through sitting in ceremony every month. And it just got louder and louder. And the ways I was being in the world started to not work as much. And yet I also noticed resources and support showing up to help me on the journey as well.
Mm. Makes sense. Makes sense. And any sacred or simple practice you would like to suggest, which helps you return to, or makes you centered, grounded, and also root back to your sacred feminine within you.
Yeah. So my secret practice has really evolved through the years. And so I think it's helpful to note that, like, yours can too. And so sometimes that can mean setting aside time in the morning. I think the morning is so potent because it's really setting up your vision of the day. And so having that time set aside where you can either read a sacred text and meditate on the wisdom there can be profound. And I also found myself wanting something that felt more lived. And so I think it's great to also create an altar, because then you have this physical presence that you can connect with every morning, and it can start to feel like this deeper feeling of love and rich embodiment that you're feeling a lot of nourishment connecting with. And so it can be a nice way to create ritual and that building that everyday habit almost. And so that's really wonderful. In the spring and summer months, it can also be really lovely to adorn yourself with some sort of oil. I like to use essential oils that have a carrier in them so that they're essentially a body oil, and to really celebrate and nourish you and the body that carries you around everywhere, and come back to knowing that you yourself are divine.
Mm. And Kellen, a bit of a contradictory perspective here. Um, there's often a cultural message that your success, although it can be subjective, it is about hustle. It's about you need to keep going. It's not about softness. Do you think embracing the sacred feminine could ever be misunderstood as passive or weak or soft?
Yes, and I myself felt that way, and I think that's why I was afraid of it. And the invitation there is to really think about a tree and to recognize that, for so long we've actually overcorrected into the masculine where it is that immense amount of pressure to create something without the pleasure, joy, laughter, softness. And yet, what the sacred feminine is inviting people to is to have a relationship with both strength and softness, that both can coexist to create a new framework. And so, thinking about just like the tree has a strong roots and it has a strong trunk, that's the structure. It also allows the beautiful unfoldment of delicate flowers that both can coexist, and that softness doesn't necessarily mean no structure and no fortitude.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I asked because I think it's not to challenge the truth of what you do, Kellen, but some listeners they might be sitting on the edge of old beliefs and this new way of being. Because yeah, sometimes we can get into a dilemma. So I think this definitely needs to be discussed upon. And of course, before we wrap up, Karen, if our listeners would like to connect with you and explore more about embracing, exploring the sacred feminine within them, and then also um, the inner rhythm within them, what's the best way to do?
Will you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, so if our listeners would wish to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, people can find me on KalenOlson.com, Kalen Olson, Olson.com. And then Instagram is also Kalen Olson.
Great. I'll have the details mentioned in the show notes. And once again, Kaylin, thank you so much for holding this space today and showing us that power, reminding us of the power in slowing down, listening inward, and then trusting the beauty within us. Thank you.
Mm, my pleasure.
And to all of the listeners, I hope this conversation sparked something within you. I know it's not by accident. So maybe this is the call to time to return to your own rhythm, to listen more deeply, and also to respect, to honor the sacred within. And if you wish to connect with Keelan, just refer to the show notes along with this episode. Until next time, I'm your host, Sana, and this is The Mindful Living. Thank you.